Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sylvia Taylor. Thanks for joining us today in our next webinar in our Lunch and Learn series, which is about Every Door Direct Mail, or EDDM. We'll be chatting a little bit about that today. There is a lot to cover in only a half hour, so I'll try to move through things pretty quickly. As always, you will be sent a link following the webinar to download the recording in case you miss anything, and as well as an opportunity to receive a copy of the presentation if you would like that. So I'm kind of running this one on my own today, so I don't have any other speakers to introduce, and we can go ahead and get started. So Every Door Direct Mail, this is a offering of the United States Postal Service. And up until recently, I personally really didn't have that much knowledge of it. It wasn't something that a lot of our clients asked for. But as we started to sort of expand our direct marketing support to businesses and local organizations, I ended up learning a little bit more about Every Door Direct Mail, and it has a lot of very practical applications. It's the United States Postal Service's most affordable geo-targeted advertising option it was basically created for do-it-yourself marketing. It was designed in a retail format to appeal to small business owners or other non-marketing professionals who just wanted to get into doing some direct marketing for their organization. So that's kind of the background on it. The way that Every Door Direct Mail is marketing and described, it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. So basically, there is an option to go in on a United States Postal Service website with a tool where you can map out various routes, and they're basically carrier routes, and you can search for different routes based on zip codes or cities or certain streets or things like that, to do some very targeted direct mail. The next step is to design your mailer and then have it printed with a print partner, and originally mail it yourself. That is kind of the basic idea behind the original EDDM, which is retail EDDM. But as we all know, with anything that involves the United States Postal Service, it's not really that simple after all. It can be a little bit tough if you're just an individual business owner out there trying to do your own direct marketing with EDDM. So that's why I'm here today to talk about the different types of EDDM and what you need to consider as far as including it as a valuable tool in your marketing portfolio. In the right situations, EDDM can be an extremely targeted and cost-effective direct marketing tactic. The difference between EDDM and other direct mail is that EDDM is targeted only by geography. It is not the same as targeted direct mail. Targeted direct mail frequently uses mailing lists and things like that to send direct mail pieces out to individuals. The difference is that EDDM is targeting only through location, and it's a mail piece that's basically sent to a postal customer at an address, not a named recipient. So unlike most direct marketing, it really can't be personalized or tracked, and it does not get a barcode. So it's strictly based on address and deliverability through mail carriers. And that's the difference between EDDM and other direct mail. It is well suited for certain things. A lot of what EDDM is good for is reaching individuals in certain areas for promoting businesses or raising awareness for certain local organizations. So, I mean, the list is endless. I've included a few things here: restaurants, lawn care, home improvement, urgent care, real estate, dentists. In addition, things like pizzerias, flower shops, specialty shops, HVAC, healthcare professionals, things like that. But EDDM can also be used for local awareness marketing, which you don't see quite as frequently, but for events, cultural institutions such as museums, various religious organizations like churches, and also for raising awareness for political candidates. So just that's a little bit different application for EDDM. And we'll talk about the differences in doing those types of EDDM with the variation between strict retail versus a bulk mail EDDM. So that leads us into our next topic. As we go through this presentation, the main considerations that I'm going to try to hit on are the differences between retail and the other type of EDDM, which you don't really hear about as often, which is called bulk mail entry unit, or BPMU EDDM. How geo-targeting works and how to use the online services that the Postal Service offers to do some geo-targeting. Some pertinent notes about production and postal preparation. There are certain requirements for the sizes of EDDM mail pieces, as well as how they're prepared and presented to the post office, and then a little bit of information about mail entry. The bottom line is that if you're a small business owner or an individual that wants to do a mailing, you can do EDDM mailings by yourself, but honestly, it's a whole lot easier with a service provider. And you're also able to take advantage of usually better postage discount rates that way. So getting started, let's talk about the differences between the two types of EDDM, which are basically retail and bulk mail entry unit, or BPMU. So EDDM retail, almost any business can take advantage of doing EDDM retail. And this is the primary type of EDDM that you'll hear promoted. You'll see it advertised online. There are a lot of different organizations and small printers that do it. And it has a certain application, but it also has a lot of limitations. We are not going to spend a lot of time talking about EDDM retail today. I'm going to focus more on the BPMU version because it has a lot more flexibility. Retail has a cap as far as how many pieces can be sent through retail EDDM. It's up to 5,000 pieces per zip code per day. There is a minimum of 200 pieces, or if you're only targeting a select route that has actually fewer addresses on that route, then that's okay. If that's all they have is say 168, then that will still qualify. The postage right now is 20 cents per piece. And again, this program is designed so that an individual can go online, select their routes, go to a quick printer, get the pieces printed, and then take care of the, there are some bundling requirements and facing slip requirements, but basically that somebody could take care of that themselves, pay the postage online, go to the local post office and drop their mailers in the mail to go to folks who live, close by. That's sort of what it's set up for. The fine print about EDDM retail is that it's available for marketing mail standard only. So there is no option for nonprofit rates for EDDM retail. And again, users are typically tasked with preparing their own postal prep and actually taking their mailers to the local DDU as destination delivery unit, but it's basically your local post office and dropping them off there. Um, Moving on, I'd like to spend more time talking about EDDM bulk mail entry unit because it offers a much broader range of flexibility than EDDM Retail. And, you know, the Postal Service doesn't talk about it a lot. There's really not a lot of information out there unless you actually go digging for it. For certain mailers and certain types of promotions, it is a great option. It can save you or your clients money on postage. And, you know, it's just something that a lot of people, I think, don't consider. EDDM BPMU allows businesses and organizations to send larger quantity mailings and take advantage of additional postage savings. Plus, it offers some added benefits, such as actually being able to use EDDM nonprofit rates. This, again, is something that a lot of folks, even in the direct marketing industry, do not know, that you can mail EDDM at nonprofit rates. The qualifications surrounding the business mail entry EDDM is that this type of mail for every door direct mail must have a bulk mail permit, and the mailings must be managed online through the business customer gateway. So basically what this means is you can't go directly to the post office and do a mailing like this in most instances. You would need to go through a service provider such as ProList to be able to prepare the mail for you and enter it with a bulk mail permit through the customer gateway. So the steps leading up to that are basically the same as far as selecting routes and designing a mail piece. But after that, a service provider would generally take the project from there and produce the mail pieces and mail them. Just to give a little bit of you know, kind of relative framework regarding postage rates for EDDM BPMU. Now, remember, for retail, the postage rate is 20 cents a piece. For general marketing mail, right now the rates are around, you know, 33 cents a piece. For general marketing mail nonprofit, you'll be looking at 17 to 19 cents a piece. So there are several opportunities here to save money on postage over those rates. There are different levels of BPMU postage rates, but for a basic non-discounted, which means you really haven't gone any further down the process of doing a special sortation to go to some sectional center facilities or networking distribution centers, or even sorting down to the destination delivery unit. The destination delivery unit is basically the end delivery post office. You're still saving some money over the standard rates, anywhere usually between 5 and 7 cents a piece. For standard marketing mail, that would be 23.5 cents, and for nonprofit around 14.7. Now, if you are able to sort the EDDM down to the post office, the individual post office, you can save additional money and get that postage down to 16.8 cents for standard marketing mail and as low as 8 cents for nonprofit. Oh, sorry about that. Went the wrong way. So there really are some rate savings there with being able to use EDDM if it's something that is applicable to how you're trying to reach your audience. The next section here I would like to cover will be a little bit more about the specifics of EDDM. As with any type of postal mail classification, there are subparameters surrounding the sizes and shapes of what the mail pieces must be, as well as the addressing requirements. And I want to talk a little bit about selecting routes, because that's something I get a lot of questions on. I do work with quite a few clients that do BPMU EDDM. for things like announcing openings of local organizations, things like that. So the route selection is really a handy little thing to know. So there is an online tool through the USPS that is designed specifically for allowing you to search for different carrier routes. And I've included the link here. Basically, it's just it's a filtering system. So when you go in there, you would pick the option to search for routes, and then you would see a little box come up, and it's going to ask you for information, which could either be a zip code or a specific address. Most of the time, if it's a museum and you're trying to reach individuals within a certain radius, which you can also set the radius, you would put the address of the museum in and then have the program search for the carrier routes that are available around that area. The results are displayed in two options, which I've shown here. The first is a table, which includes a listing of the routes. And if you're working with a mail service provider, the zip code and route numbers are important to provide your mail service provider with, because that's what we will use to figure out which routes and the quantities should be produced for the mailing. And you'll also see some demographic information. That's not information that can be used for selections, but it is just information about the individuals who are in those routes that you're selecting. The cost column is for the approximate postage cost. Again, that's always calculated at the base rate, and it's also calculated for standard marketing mail, not for nonprofit. But it will give you an idea of the approximate postage. And then the other cool part is the mapping feature, which you can really get all the way down to street levels. If you're just trying to target a very specific neighborhood, that's really handy to be able to go in there and see, as well as where the routes kind of split off from one another. So very handy tool, easy to use once you've done it a few times. So once you've selected your routes, the next step in the process is to design your mail piece. This is a really important facet of EDDM, and the rules are that any EDDM must be a marketing mail flat-sized mail piece. So that means it's going to be larger. It's non-letter sized, and there are some specific requirements as far as the dimensions. Now, the important thing to note here when you're looking at the minimum dimensions is that the word "or" is used. So it has to be longer than 10.5 inches or higher than 6 1/8 of an inch and less than 1/4 inch thick. I did put the minimum thickness on there, which is the same as for letter-sized mail, small postcards, which is 0.007. And the most common sizes we see for EDDM are 4 by 11, 6.5 by 9, 6.5 by 11, 8.5 by 11, which is a pretty large piece, and the largest, which is 11 by 14. So those are pretty common sizes. The mailers cannot really be folded. They cannot be in an envelope. There are some requirements with the addressing, which we will talk about as well, as far as where that has to be located. But in general, that's a pretty good rule of thumb for EDDM, is to, stick with these common sizes or something that is similar to it. EDDM does have some addressing requirements as well. These they're different between retail and BMEU. The retail ones are pretty straightforward. The mail pieces must have the mailing label address panel on the top half of the mail piece. The orientation of the label doesn't matter. The shortest end will always be the top half of the mail piece. And I included a couple of graphics here so you can kind of see how that falls, and the length is always the longest side. Also included here are an example of an indicia for EDDM Retail. That's one thing I had not mentioned yet. All EDDM has to have an indicia. It doesn't get stamped, it doesn't get metered. It has to have an indicia, and the postage will come out of either a bulk mail permit for BMEU or will be paid at the post office or online for EDDM Retail. The local postal customer is an example of the address block. That basically is the address block for these pieces. You could also use something like Dear Resident or something like that. But again, no individual personalization, naming, or addressing would be on there. The addressing requirements for BMEU, there's a little more variation in these, and your mail service provider would certainly be able to, explain the differences, and if you have a preference, be able to, include whichever option would be the best. You will see that there is the additional endorsement, ECRWSS, which stands for Enhanced Carrier Route Walk Sequence Saturation. That's a long one. So basically that's what EDDM is. It is carrier route, it is walk sequence, and saturation means pretty much that everyone on the delivery route is going to get a mail piece. All mail pieces must contain that ECRWSS endorsement in the address area or within or below the permanent indicia. So the illustrations here show both options, where it could be just placed under the indicia or actually in part of the address block. I guess another note is the city, state, and 5-digit zip code are recommended, but certainly not required. A few other interesting facts about EDDM is that EDDM mailings may be drop shipped to out of area destination delivery units, which are end unit post offices, by priority mail. That is true for both retail and bulk mail EDDM. The bulk mail EDDM mailings can also be trucked to sectional center facilities and network distribution center facilities, just like normal dropship mailings. And that again saves on postage. Those rates are a little bit lower than the standard EDDM and slightly higher than taking them directly to each individual post office. So I like to point that out because that makes bulk mail EDDM a good option, even for, direct marketing agencies or organizations that are doing larger mailings, because there's no quantity limit on the EDDM bulk mailing. So, it can be up to several 100,000 if you were trying to target a certain state or a certain city with multiple zip codes or something like that. And the drop shipping basically would get those pieces to that individual location fairly quickly. Another interesting point is, of course, mail tracking is not available for EDDM because it does not have a barcode on there. But I have done a little bit of research, and the average delivery time is typically between 7 to 14 days after the mailers arrive at the end unit post office. So what happens is they're bundled in groups and given to the individual carriers for the delivery routes. And so depending on how much other EDDM mail there is, it's kind of worked in there. So it's typical delivery with the same time frame as standard marketing mail. And I know that was a really quick tour through EDDM. I would say that was a high level overview. Certainly, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out for me. I've spent a lot of time working with a few clients who do a lot of EDDM, which works very well for them. And I just wanted to also list a couple of other resources on here if you're interested in learning more. The post office does have a pretty good user guide that is available online, and that's a good place to start. It will give an overview. It also provides information on some things that I didn't cover today, which are things like the specific postal preparation, if you're interested in that, as far as how the bundling works. It's usually in groups of 50 or 100, depending on what size the mailing is, as well as the facing slip preparation. Now, if you're going through a service provider like ProList, then we do all that for you and you really don't have to worry about it. You would only need to tell us what routes you're trying to get the distribution for and provide the design for your piece, or we could do the design if you didn't have that as well. There is another reference guide that the USPS offers, as well as a kind of like a quick fact reference sheet that I have found helpful too. So that's really a high level overview of EDDM. I did have a couple of questions, it looks like, that came in while I was rambling on, listening to myself talk. So the first question I got was about leveraging EDDM into some kind of an integrated campaign. Is there any way to sort of integrate this to, I guess, drive people online? And the best thing I would say is that you can use QR codes on EDDM. I think that's a great application to kind of drive folks from getting these mailers immediately to the website. The nice thing about that is if there's some kind of a form that they have to fill out when they get there, you can actually track who came to the website from getting a mailer. So I would highly recommend that. And that's probably the best way, to integrate EDDM with online. The other thing I can say, and although I haven't really tried this for any of my clients, this is a little different than integrating it with online, but there is always the option too, to be able to customize messages within the different routes that you're targeting. So I guess one example of that might be if you're targeting, 10 or 15 routes around a city, and there are a couple different maybe locations for whatever it is you're promoting, whether it's automotive or a dentist office or something like that. Within the routes, you could vary. With digital printing, you could vary the offers between the routes as far as where to direct people to go or what the individual offers are. So that's kind of a neat application as well. I think we have time for one more question. The next question was, are EDDM costs lower than the cost of traditional direct mail? Yeah, I will have to say yes. In general, they are. Number one, because you're limited to doing in many instances, more of a marketing flat size self mailer. So no insert packages. Depending on the quantity that you're doing, you could be looking at 10 or 15 cents a piece for printing. Of course, lower than that as the quantity goes up. And then there's no list rental costs. Basically, the route selection is easy to do. It's free online, and the data processing costs are pretty much non-existent as well. The only real cost is for mapping out the routes, creating the facing slips, and basically creating a setup for approval of the mailer. And then again, we saw that the postage costs can be significantly less. So yes, it is cheaper. I think a lot of people just skip over EDDM and maybe don't give it as much credit as it is worth. But it's just another tool in a direct marketer's tool belt, I guess, to be able to get the mail to the individuals who are most likely to respond. So we are at 1 minute over time. I will go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. This session has been recorded, so you will be able to get a recording. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I did not include my email on this slide and my rush to get it done, but I will make sure that that is included in the follow-up message that you get from the session. So thank you very much for joining us today at our webinar, and I appreciate it. Have a great day. Thank you.